What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my main man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talker. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. The Pittsburgh Steelers continue to wait, and the Brandon Aiyuk saga, well, it does not seem to be slowing down. If anything, it is getting wilder with every turn and every moment. We're going to dive into the latest updates that occurred throughout the night and where we stand as of this morning. Meanwhile, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they play a preseason game tonight, and it is going to be electric. People seem to forget that the Houston Texans absolutely spanked these guys last season, but it's a new offense. It's a new quarterback. Seems like a new team here in Pittsburgh. We're going to dive into who we're watching, what this means for Justin Fields, and is this an opportunity for him to actually make this a real, true quarterback competition, and what our goals are as the Pittsburgh Steelers take the field against the Houston Texans tonight at Acrisure Stadium. It's a rainy one, but football is back, so who cares? How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling great. I mean, it's the Steelers game day. I'm going to be spending this weekend at the beach trying to dodge a hurricane. So it's going to be a great weekend as long as, I don't get smacked in the face by the hurricane.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. That my basement's getting smacked in the face by the hurricane, so it's all good. What beach you going to?
Myrtle. So,
long drive. Good. Yeah. Oh, is it? I don't know. Anything for any beach from Pittsburgh is a long drive. I learned that very quickly coming out here, that you cannot get to water if you needed to get to water, you're stuck. This is as landlocked as it gets.
You got the point of rivers down there,
except for the rivers. But if you're going in that water, man, if you're swimming in the river, do you swim in the rivers?
No, I don't jump in the river at all.
Thank God. I was a little nervous that you were a river swimmer. They're scary people, man. You're catching something in there. I don't know what it is, but you're catching a lot of things. So no like real things. But I'm glad. Hope you have fun. And hurricane gets you, man. Well, we'll just leave it blank. We'll leave a little screen down there with nothing going on in memory of Nick Belsky. But I hope you enjoy it. With that said, let's dive into the hottest topic of conversation when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The only thing that people are talking about. We got a quarterback competition going on. Some slight changes to the offensive line. The Pittsburgh Steelers play an actual football game tonight, but all eyes are on the same exact thing, and that is Brandon Aiyuk, where the Pittsburgh Steelers stand, what updates are here, and whether or not this is going to happen. Late last night, before everybody went to bed, Jerry Dulac tweeted out that the Pittsburgh Steelers are, quote-unquote, waiting. This is what he said. Sources, the Steelers are waiting to hear from the 49ers if a deal for Brandon Aiyuk is going to happen. Several factors could be involved, and one of them is the 49ers would like a wide receiver to replace Aiyuk, but the Steelers are not using any of their players as part of the trade. Then Mike Garafolo yesterday, which we somewhat addressed on the show, but we'll dive into it a little bit deeper as more information has come out. It's a possible 3-team trade that the 49ers are, quote unquote, snooping around, calling other teams, seeing if anybody is available. And Davante Adams is the name to watch in Vegas because apparently they could get their hands on Davante. The Steelers would send the Raiders some draft capital, and the Pittsburgh Steelers would land Brandon Aiyuk. You hear all that? I got a lot of thoughts. I was on the Locked On Steelers podcast last night talking about this. I was very excited to dive into it, and it just kind of got the wheels in motion. I don't think I haven't stopped thinking about it yet, but I'll ask you your opinion. A 3-team trade in the NFL, my friend. Could it happen? What is your expectations?
I mean, all of these teams seem very, what's the word I'm looking for here? They seem very much in line of wanting to get a deal done, but they're also all stubborn, so they don't want to do it without getting what they want in return. San Francisco, credit where credit's due, they are a Super Bowl contender this year. Bona fide, went to the Super Bowl, were 2 plays away from it last year. They want somebody back to help them get back to that Super Bowl plateau and hopefully push past it in their eyes. And they want a wide receiver back. That's what Kyle Shanahan wants. So they're going to try to get one by any means possible. And the Steelers, they want Brandon Aiyuk. They see him as the missing piece. They see him as the piece that takes them from a team that's going to be a playoff team and might be able to make some noise to a team that should be considered amongst the best in the AFC. And with 2 teams as stubborn and as motivated to get this done as the Steelers and 49ers, bringing in a 3rd team makes some sense. But again, how stubborn is that 3rd team going to be? And are they going to be able to all coexist and get a deal done? That just makes it harder, but also there's a lot of motivation on every side here.
Yeah, I'll say this. My thought is kind of shifted. At this point, I look at it and say if the San Francisco 49ers are looking to bring in a third team and get this deal really done, they want a wide receiver, they think they could find one. If I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? If anything, I'm taking my foot off the gas and I'm just coasting and letting this happen. If the 49ers want to go out and find a trade partner so that the Pittsburgh Steelers could send draft capital to them, great. But the Pittsburgh Steelers should not be upping their draft capital to what it was. If it was originally a second or a third round pick, it should remain a second or a third round pick. It should not get any higher than that just because they're going with a different team. I think this gives the Steelers leverage. I believe that the 49ers acknowledging that they're trying to do something that does not happen in the NFL. The three-team tree, this is not the NBA. This is I dug. I got so into it last night that I was down a rabbit hole of 3-team trades in the NFL. I couldn't find one. And maybe I don't think that it's ever happened in the NFL. The way I look at it is if San Francisco is willing to do that, if they're really diving into this, they are clear as day saying we need to make this trade happen. In my eyes, that gives the Pittsburgh Steelers all of the leverage. And they could look at this and say, if anything, maybe our price goes down because you desperately want to get rid of Brandon Aiyuk because you understand this is not going to end well. I think it works in the Steelers' favor. I think that this is the upper hand that the Steelers have been waiting for. Maybe it moves it closer. I don't know. I don't think a 3-team trade is possible in the NFL. I really don't. But I also believe that Jerry Dulack's tweet of the Steelers are waiting to hear from the 49ers is in reference to the Steelers are waiting for the 49ers to make their phone calls and see if they can find a trade partner and then come back with an offer. And if you're coming back, let's say you're Omar Khan. If I'm John Lynch, I make a phone call and I say, hey, we got Devontae Adams. You got to give up a second-round pick to go get him. Straight up. Just a second-round pick. You saying yes to that?
For Brandon Aiyuk?
You get Brandon Aiyuk. You send Devontae Adams to San Francisco.
For a second-round pick.
A second-round pick.
Without even hesitating. I mean, we've been talking about packages that include way more than that.
I think
a second rounder? Yeah, I sent a second-rounder for Brandon Aiyuk, and I understand that there's a money side of things, but we've gotten to the point where the money side of things is basically on the back burner. We know that they're willing to pay it. They're going to pay it if they can get them. A second rounder for potentially your number one wide receiver for the next 3 years. Yeah, I make that deal.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm saying that. Now, let me say this. I don't think I'm going further than that. I think where we stand today, yesterday was a different story. 24 hours, every 24 hours, things are changing constantly. I believe the Steelers hold the upper hand to a point where I'm not giving up more than a second round pick. Where we stand, I'm not, unless it's like a second and a fifth, a second and a sixth, cool. But I'm not giving up a second in James Daniels. I'm not giving up a second and a third. I believe that where we stand right now, the 49ers are in such a deep spot that the Steelers could, yesterday it was the Steelers can't fleece the 49ers. The 49ers aren't going to look to get fleeced. This has to be somewhat even. Right now, if the 49ers are that desperate, I think I don't want to say the word fleece, but they could win this trade. The Steelers, I believe, could win this trade.
Yeah, it gets to a point where every team gets a little bit of what they want. I guess the Raiders only get maybe a second-round pick, but also the Raiders are a team that aren't looking to contend anytime soon. I know they like Devontae Adams. I know towards the end of last season, they started to shift the culture kind of with him being one of the pivotal points. But again, you're not a team that's trying to go for it. So if you can get something to help you in the future, it makes some sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I'm the Steelers, I'm pulling back. I mean, the Raiders can make some difficulties because they'll want more. But if I'm the Steelers and I'm just chilling and the 49ers are going to go do all the work, I'm okay with it. I think the Steelers have gained a massive upper hand in the last day or so. And where we sit right now, I'm still just as optimistic it's going to happen, but I think that it's going to look much better in Omar Khan's favor than it did a day, 2 days ago, where we currently stand. We'll dive into all the Brandon Aiyuk questions, but first, let's do some game stuff because there is a game today, and it's very important to talk preseason. I feel all we've done is talk Brandon Aiyuk for, 24 hours now. But first, we do have to answer Chris's question because we appreciate you as always. Why don't the 49ers just trade Aiyuk for whatever draft picks Pittsburgh will offer, then trade with the Raiders on their own? Why goat rope us in? Is goat rope a thing?
No. why do you have to rope us in? I feel like is got to rope us in, maybe, is what he was going for there.
Yep. Okay. Goat rope. I thought goat rope was a real thing.
Okay.
I believe that could possibly happen, but I don't know. Because things are getting so complicated, in my head, it means that the 49ers are becoming more desperate. You only make things complicated if you're desperate. If this was the reason the Steelers are not pushing, the reason the Steelers have not come out and the big announcement of the Steelers have given up everything in the world for this, or even the reports are just to break it down more simply. There have been reports that the Cleveland Browns are willing to give up a wide receiver that they've already paid for the season. There have been reports that the New England Patriots were ready to make Brandon Aiyuk a $32 million per year wide receiver. The only reports from Pittsburgh are they're not giving up enough for the 49ers to feel comfortable making the trade, which is exactly where you want to be. Because if you are a desperate team, you will make desperate moves. And that's where the 49ers seem to stand, is they kind of feel like a desperate team making desperate moves. Am I overanalyzing here, or does it make some sense?
No, they're on their back foot. And I think everybody that's been following along with this knows they're on their back foot, especially whenever all summer they said, listen, we're going to get a deal done. Listen, we're going to get a deal done. Meanwhile, they weren't negotiating for a deal. And then training camp comes and they act kind of surprised. Oh, Brandon's not practicing. We might get a deal done. And then a week later, they're saying, all right, he's really not going to play for us. So we got to do something. And at that point, a lot of the suitors have kind of bowed out. And now you're down to two suitors in Cleveland where he doesn't want to go, Pittsburgh where he wants to go. But again, Omar Khan knows that, so he's using that leverage as much as he can to try to, make sure that he doesn't overpay and actually try to underpay for Brandon Aiyuk, which is why we're in this situation.
Yep, I agree 100%. 100%. All right, let's talk some game stuff, and then we will dive into all the Brandon Aiyuk questions, all the questions that you guys have. I know there's going to be a ton, so we'll come back to it, but we do want to touch on the preseason opener because it's a big night here in Pittsburgh. I'm excited to get down there. It is a little bit rainy. You want to know what I'm more excited for, to be honest with you?
The walkover?
It's been a long time since I've done a walkover, man. It's been a long time since I've done like a real guys yelling in the background, drunk people walking around walkover. It's going to be, it gives me tingles just thinking about it. Like I got butterflies a little bit. I'm excited to, I love it, to be honest. Oh, here we go.
There it is.
Goat rope is a military. Oh, look at that. Learn something new every day. You learn something new every day. Appreciate you, Chris. All right, let's dive into the game real quick. Then we'll go back to Brandon Aiyuk. I want to start with players to watch because this is the first time that we will get to see the Pittsburgh Steelers and really a revamped team, yes, offensively and defensively, and there's a ton to dive into, but I think there are 5 players that I have my eyes on that, for one, can either solidify a spot for themselves on this roster or as part of the game plan, and for 2, can make a massive impact on the success of the Pittsburgh Steelers. My list starts with Pat Freiermuth. I have raved about Pat Freiermuth all offseason long. This guy looks like a monster. I'm very excited to see what he does. I don't expect him to be out there for super long, but I also expect him to be out there long enough to where him and Justin Fields can get a couple of connections and make some stuff happen. And so far during training camp, that has been the case, that Pat Freiermuth has been locked in with Jay Fields, and I believe that can continue. I'm excited to see game situation, a good defense, a really strong linebacker core go up against Pat Freiermuth and see what he can possibly do. Number 2 on that list is the guy behind him, and that is Darnell Washington. Because, man, we have talked the last couple of days, the last couple of weeks about what Darnell Washington has brought to the Steelers offense and how he looks like he's ready to take a step forward and be a receiver and so on and so forth. I want to see it all, man. I want to see Darnell Washington run some people over. I want to see him catch some footballs. I want to see him possibly be a red zone threat. I just believe that Darnell Washington could have a big impact on the Steelers this season. And he's a guy that, in my head, is going to take a significant, maybe the biggest step forward for the Steelers this season. Before we get on to the defensive side of the ball, my third one is a personal favorite and not one that I think everybody really wants to keep their eyes on. But if you're a football junkie, especially if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, like that's what I love about this city and this football team and this fan base and everything, is that I am fired up right now about a guy that 99% of other organizations would not care about, but everybody that is listening to this will get just as fired up about the second he makes one play. and that is Jack Coletto. Because, man, we are bringing the fullback back. The Pittsburgh Steelers are in this. I mean, look at yesterday, I said it, and I'll say it again. I asked Jaylen Warren how excited he is when Jack Coletto lines up in front of him, and he gave me the biggest smile. Just, yeah, nope, it's going to be a good time. Jack Coletto could be such a difference maker to the Steelers offense. Having a fullback is such a game changer to a run-heavy offense, and if he's a good one, man, what he could bring to the team is just going to be electric. There is no better play. I will say this for the 100th time this training camp. There is no better play in football than watching a fullback run somebody over to create a hole for a long run. There's no better play in football, hands down. On the defensive side of the ball, Deshaun Elliott and Beanie Bishop are my two to end this list. Deshaun Elliott has looked phenomenal in training camp. I am stunned that I didn't know who this guy was before he showed up in Pittsburgh. He is lights out. Like, he is the best safety alongside Minkah Fitzpatrick the Steelers have had since Minkah Fitzpatrick has arrived in Pittsburgh. And I was a big Terrell Edmunds fan, but I am a much bigger Deshaun Elliott fan. I think he's going to be great. And Beanie Bishop, this is an opportunity. You're going to line up against Stephon Diggs. You're going to line up against Tank Dell. You're going to line up against Nico Collins. Like, these are big names that you are going to have to shut down. And yeah, he's done a good job against Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson and Van Jefferson and Quez Watkins. Sometimes George Pickens, can he be just as good against some starting wide receivers and maybe one of the best wide receiver cores in the NFL? I think this is a massive opportunity for Beanie Bishop. I don't know. Those are my five guys. Who are you interested in watching?
Yeah, it's three guys, one entity. It's the rookie offensive linemen, and all of them are going to be with the second team today, which is fine, but I'm interested to see what they're able to do. Zach Frazier, everybody's expecting him to be the starter week one. What does he do in his first game action in an NFL uniform? Same goes for Troy Fautanu. There's been conflicting reports coming out of camp about his growth and his development, but we saw earlier this week that he got some 1 reps. So what's he do in this opportunity against 2s? And that's the huge thing for these guys, is they're going up against 2s on the other side of things. So if you're expecting them to be starting in week 1, they should be able, at the very least, get the bulk majority of those reps and win them in tonight's game. So I'm keeping my eye on those two. And then the third name's interesting. It's Mason McCormick. I mean, we talked about Mason McCormick saying, yeah, maybe in 2 years, this is a guy that they're wanting to develop into an eventual starter on the interior of the offensive line. He's been very impressive, and the coaching staff has been very complimentary of Mason McCormick. He's made his name known early in training camp, and maybe this is another, with Spencer Anderson situation where, hey, he might not be a major piece this year to the offensive line, but this guy is a lot further along than you would expect a 4th rounder coming out of FCS ball to be right off the bat.
Yeah, I agree. Do you expect any first team reps for Troy Fautanu and Broderick Jones? Do you expect them to get any, not to start the game, but do you think by the time the starters are out, you get a run or two with those two in there?
I think you see Frazier potentially jump in for Nate Herbig, and maybe them moving Herbig over to the side, especially because right now they're trying to see what combinations they can get throughout the season. So I could imagine Frazier there, because I think he's closer to the starting job than Fautanu is at right tackle right now.
Okay. I'm excited to see anybody. You toss a rookie in the starting offensive line. That's just a moment. You know what I mean? These guys are the future. And just like you said, like they've impressed. So at this point, to see them, especially against, like, Zach Frazier is a good one because the defensive line is fantastic. But if Troy gets any reps against Will Anderson, like, that's a challenge. That's a guy that is a massive disruptor in the NFL. So I agree. The offensive line is going to be a good one. The rookie offensive line. Yeah, that's exciting, man. That's exciting. Who do you expect to start at left guard over Isaac Seumalo? Do you believe? I believe it's Spencer Anderson, but I'm not totally sure.
I feel like it's Spencer Anderson today.
Yeah, I think he gets a good one, and I'm excited to see what he brings, because he could be a piece. He could definitely be a piece for the future and right now for the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, what's your offensive goals for the Pittsburgh Steelers in this one? You look at this team, this unit. Justin Fields will lead them out. The starters will go outside of Isaac. You get a new offensive coordinator under Arthur Smith, a completely new offensive game plan. Everybody's fired up and excited. They see the identity and the future and the vision that Arthur Smith has brought to this team. Yesterday, he banished the jet sweep in a group of reporters. What is your offensive goals for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
It's weird to say, but was the number one offense not perfect last year in the preseason? I understand we want to stay as far away from last year's offense as possible, but the results in the preseason are what you're looking for, but a little bit different. You want to do it with, it's going to be a very vanilla offense. They're not going to throw out a lot of things you're going to see in the regular season tonight, but they're going to do it in smash mouth fashion. That's what I want to see. I want to see I formations, which I was extremely excited to see when I was up there on Tuesday. I want to see those. I want to see Jack Coletto plowing people over, and I want to see them run down the Texans' throat. And I understand everybody's excited about Justin Fields, but whether it's Fields or Wilson, this offense is going to make its bones. It's going to get its first downs. It's going to score touchdowns on the ground. So I want to see that starting today.
Yeah, I think that's a good one, because that's just like you said, the identity of the Pittsburgh Steelers this season, no matter who the quarterback is. And I understand that the quarterback competition is the biggest topic of conversation outside of the wide receiver trade. The meat and bones, exactly like you said, of this offense is going to be Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, and the offensive line and the run game. And we'll see how that works. I agree. My goal for the Steelers is to not, splash plays are awesome, but we learned last year that a deep pass to George Pickens for a touchdown against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers doesn't mean anything in the regular season. So, yeah, explosive plays would be cool. I want to see a very competent offense. I want to see an offense that is fluid, that doesn't look like that. Last year, it was big play or nothing for the Steelers offense. You were stunned if they scored a touchdown. Stunned. You were like, wow, what just happened? They just scored a touchdown. That's how bad it was. This year, I just want to see in a game against the starters, I want to see the offense look like, hey, these guys are competent. This is a capable offense that just looks fluid, that looks smooth, that allows you to see immediately they could go up against a team that beat them by, 27 points last year or something crazy like that, to go to a competition where it's like, okay, this is close. And you feel that this is a real competition. The Steelers offense can run with the defense as strong as Houston's. Just competency is all I'm looking for. Just fluidity. And if they go out there and they score 2 touchdowns on 2 plays, I think I'll be a little bit disappointed, because it'll be electric, obviously, but I want to see the meat and bones. I want to see the insides of this offense. I want to see what it really gets into in the nitty gritty. That's what I'm looking for as an offensive goal. The next topic of conversation is a big one. That's Justin Fields. In your eyes, and I've been thinking about this for a while, in your eyes, where do you think Justin Fields in this game goes? Do you believe that this is an opportunity for him to make this a real quarterback competition? Or do you view this as, hey, this is the Steelers' opportunity to see Justin Fields and maybe see the potential beyond this season in Justin Fields? And the second question to this, what is your goal for Justin Fields in this game against the Texans?
So to answer the first question, what does tonight do? Tuesday when I was up there was the first day that Russell Wilson actually participated in like 50%.
Yeah, you came out here to just watch after weeks of, oh man, Justin, we'll get to see Justin. You showed up to Russ.
I showed up. There was Justin mixed in with Russ. Yeah. And that's the day that we were sitting across a room from each other and we discussed on this podcast. Now the quarterback competition begins. And when it begins, yes, Russ has an advantage still, even after missing a couple weeks. Mike Tomlin said it. He put it in the depth chart. But it's about winning every day. And if Justin can win enough days, then he can potentially close the gap between him and Russell Wilson. I like Justin Fields. I'm excited to watch him tonight. And it's an opportunity for him to close that gap, because Russell is going to be in a ball cap with a clipboard tonight simply because he was injured for too long. He's didn't get a ramp up enough to get into this game, and he might not have played even if he did play and practice in all of training camp. But this is an opportunity for Justin to close the gap and win a day where his opponent is stagnant. So to me, that's what I'm looking at. And he can't win the job on a day that Russell's not playing, and he can't win the job in the first preseason game anyway, even if Russell was playing. But I'm looking for him to continue to impress and close the gap. And for your second question, what do I want to see from him? I want to see him command the offense. Like you mentioned, 2 long plays, whether it be an 80-yard run or a long bomb to George Pickens that goes 70 yards. Yeah, that'd be great. I'm sure the fan base would love to see it, but I want to see him command long drives, hitting his spots when he needs to, making sure that he makes the reads that he needs to. I just want to see him look like a quarterback that has full command of an offense, even though it's only his 6th week, if you include OTAs, actually at the helm.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's a great one. I agree with you. I don't know if it closes the gap, but I agree with you because I think that's where we are is in my words, I'd say, because I have like the same thought as you, but I don't want to repeat the same thing as you. In my eyes, it's make Justin Fields force Russell Wilson to play a preseason game. You know what I mean? Because if Justin Fields plays all 3 preseason games and Russell Wilson doesn't touch the field in the preseason, Russell Wilson has won the Steelers starting quarterback job without any question. You know, if Russ does not touch a football in the preseason, Mike Tomlin has already made his mind up. And in my head, pole position is still very much so there. Like the fact that Russell Wilson did all of the walkthrough for a game he's not going to play in, it to me was, oh, okay, he's still the guy. He is still very much so the guy in Pittsburgh, and they view him as such. This is an opportunity for Justin Fields to say, Russ should get an opportunity to showcase himself in a game because I've done this. You know what I mean? I made it aware to everybody that I'm capable of doing this. And so I agree with you. It closing the gap for sure has an opportunity tonight. And it's the first chance, like you said, to actually close the gap because everything that he's done to this point means nothing compared to the game that he will play tonight against the Texans and what he's capable of doing in it. As for my goal, exactly what you said. I could care less about the read option. I could care less about Justin Fields improvising and doing crazy things. You want to know what I want to see from Justin Fields? I want to see him process the field in a timely manner. I want to see him run a fluid offense that isn't just full of giant splash plays, but instead is just every pass is perfect. If this was a 2-minute drill, you have full confidence that he's going to get the job done, that there is no erratic, oh my gosh, what is happening moments. I want Justin Fields to take that step because in training camp, that has been his biggest question mark is how slow he processes the field and the play that is happening in front of him. I want that to change. And I think that he has an opportunity to do so. And maybe that comes in a game where you're not playing the 5th best defense or top 5 defense in the NFL every single day who understands what you're doing because, again, you're going up against them every single day. I want to see him just find guys and make quick reactions and do everything outside of the crazy Justin Fields stuff because I already know that he could run for 100 yards. I already know that he could break tackles and take off and do the read option better than anybody in the NFL. I already know all that. I want to see him play quarterback and slow the game down and make quick reads and do the rest of it. I think that showcases to me that he's much more ready to start than if he goes out there and just lights up the field on the ground.
Yeah. And honestly, that's what you're going to want to see all of preseason. And then once the regular season comes around, when he gets in there, yeah, we know he can do all of that. So,
exactly.
And he doesn't have to be, the next Hall of Fame Tom Brady. He just needs to show that he can do it at a level that really pulls even with Russell Wilson or very closer to Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson, as we know, is obviously a veteran of this league. He's 10 years older, so he can process the game better because he's had more time to process the game. But if you can get closer to Wilson on that aspect, everything else athletic-wise kind of blows Russ out of the water. It's a matter of really whose attributes can get closer to whose, and Justin has way more, room to grow than Russ does at this point in his career.
Yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree. All right. With that said, I see we got a lot of questions out there. I'm excited to answer all of them. Let's dive into them. If you guys have more questions, please make sure to toss them in the chat. We'll answer all of them before we head out of here.
Let's go to Chris's question first. Appreciate you, Chris. Says, guys, I love our defense and where we're going, but next draft, I want them to prioritize a run-stopping nose tackle like Casey Hampton was. You have to stop the run.
Yeah, I think if Keanu Benton's going to bounce to the outside and play either defensive tackle or defensive end, replacing Cam Hayward or Larry Ogunjobi, you go out and you get another big man in the middle. Now, that could be a nose tackle, depending on Cam Hayward's contract extension and where he stands with the Steelers. You might want to get another defensive tackle who could play his position instead of just a straight nose tackle. But I agree with you. I believe that is the next step to the Steelers defense is to get another big man in the middle, allow Keanu to bounce one spot over and move forward from there. But yeah, I think that outside of a quarterback, depending on the situation there, is their biggest priority come the NFL draft in 2025.
Let's go to DJ Thomas's question next. He says, who does Brandon Aiyuk impact more, a loss for Brock Purdy or a gain for Fields and Wilson?
Oh, a gain for Fields and Wilson. A gain for Fields. Just, I mean, I'm not trying to downplay Brandon Aiyuk or anybody in Pittsburgh. It's just very matter of fact. If your offense consisted of Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle on top of Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall, and they have a backup tight end who's real good. Plus
Elijah Mitchell's pretty good too.
Elijah Mitchell, and Kyle Shanahan as your offensive coordinator or play caller, I guess. Your offense is going to be okay. They can afford the loss. The Steelers offense, on the other hand, filled with talent, don't have a Brandon Aiyuk. So that's my thing. And I think George Pickens is phenomenal, but the drop off after George Pickens is significant. It's not as significant in San Francisco. So definitely a benefit to Russ and Fields.
Let's go to Jeremy's question next. He wants to know, is there a chance at all that Najee Harris gets traded by the Steelers?
Nope. I'd say a 0% chance. It's like a firm 0. The Steelers are not going to get rid of Najee Harris. He is the center. He's the focal point of the offense. He is going to be the person that they rely on more than any other player on this offense this season. So no.
Next question is, I know everything is about timing, but do you think if we still had Deontay Johnson, we could get this trade done?
Yeah, I mean, you'd just send Deontay Johnson to San Francisco and everything would be totally fine. But at the same time, you wouldn't have Dante Jackson, so who would be your other corner? I don't think they'd have anybody, or they'd go out and get like a Patrick Peterson, who isn't the best move. So Dante Jackson for Deontay, I think in my head makes much more sense today. And yeah, it would be easy, but you'd be missing another key piece. It'd just be on the defensive side of the ball.
Let's go to Rel's question. Appreciate you, Rel. Says, why is it that Justin has to be perfect to close the gap, but Russell just has to not mess things up to keep the starting job? I just don't understand it.
That's just Mike Tomlin's mindset through this entire thing. He came in here with the understanding that Russell Wilson has done this before. He's won a Super Bowl. He's won games. I mean, you could even go back to last season. Justin Fields won some games and he took some major steps forward. I get that, but sometimes the best thing a player can do is learn. And Justin Fields has never had the opportunity to learn. People use that as the excuse all the time. And again, I'm not pro Russ or pro Justin. I'm just trying to explain the mindset of the Steelers. People want to talk about, well, Justin Fields has so much potential. Justin Fields, has never had a good opportunity in front of him. Maybe the best opportunity in front of him. And I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying maybe the best opportunity in front of him is to learn from Arthur Smith and Tom Arth and Russell Wilson on the bench and develop into the guy that he could be in a year. Maybe that's the best case scenario for Justin Fields. And that's how the Steelers are viewing this situation.
Dalton wants to know, have you ever talked to number 7 Big Ben in person? Did you ever do any reporting during his era? And if so, how is he in person?
Oh yeah. Yeah. My still probably, I don't know, the question because my family likes to bring up random moments of my reporting career. It's super awkward. When your mom is all proud of you and she's like, oh no, it did this. Everybody brings up the same moment. I asked Ben the clip of him during his final season where he leaves mid-game, goes and he sits on the steps in the tunnel, and then he comes back out and the cameras caught him. I asked him why he did that, what was going through his mind, and he joked and said, oh, I thought I broke the Steelers all-time rushing record because he wouldn't give me anything. And then the next day he looked at me and he was like, I couldn't give that to you, but I'll tell you after I retire. And he never did because I haven't seen him since. But yes, I did reporting. Ben was a true leader and knew how to talk to the media, so I was always appreciative of him.
Let's go to DJ Thomas's next question. He says, is the QB1 position more of a position for Wilson to lose or a position for Fields to win at this point?
I would say for Fields to win because Russ is not going to lose it. Russ will not lose the starting job. It will be nearly impossible for Russ to lose it himself. And I think at one point it was Russ's job to lose with the expectation that he would not lose it. Where we stand here, it's his job to lose. He will not lose it. So Justin Fields has to go out there and try to win it. I know that's complicated, but that's where we stand. It would be Fields' job to win.
Everybody's favorite quarterback on the Steelers roster. Does John Rice Plumlee make the team on special teams? Asks Vibin with the Dogs.
Shout out Vibin with the Dogs. This is a question right here. John Rice Plumlee, man, all I want, okay? All I want during this preseason is for one time for John Rice Plumlee to catch a punt and see what he could do, man. Because the other day he took a kick return back to the house, which you can say whatever you want. His kick return, they're not tackling, blah, blah, blah. No, took it to the house. Clear as day, took it to the house. I love John Rice Plumlee, man. He is so fun to watch. Not an NFL quarterback, but so fun to watch. And I think that it would be awesome if in the fourth quarter he lines back and he catches a punt or a kick or whatever, and we could see what he could do.
Let's go to Jordan next. Jordan asks, if you had to guess now, what positions will the Steelers draft next year?
If I had to guess right now, it'd be first round, defensive end, defensive tackle, something like there. If Russ and Justin don't work out, probably a quarterback. And if Brandon Aiyuk doesn't come to the Pittsburgh Steelers, wide receiver could very much so be on that list. But I would guess that's more of a second round selection for the Steelers.
Let's go to Marlon's question next. He wants to know, can we sign Brandon Aiyuk plus extend Cam and Pat while being able to sign one of the quarterbacks if they ball out?
Not if they ball out. Like, that's the thing, is that's the only troublesome part with Brandon Aiyuk is you could extend Cam, you are going to extend Pat, and you could, in a year from now, you got to extend TJ, and 2 years from now, you got to extend Minkah Fitzpatrick. If Justin Fields is looking at $50 million a year, you are in a lot of trouble. If Russell Wilson leads you to a Super Bowl and decides I'm coming back for one more year, I want $50 million, you're in a lot of trouble. I don't think you can make it work. It's the benefit of having a rookie quarterback, and the Steelers were in that spot, but they're not anymore. And I don't know. You could figure it out. You could always figure it out, but it does make it much more difficult.
Joe Dilly wants to know, if the 49ers want a wide receiver, why not give them Calvin Austin? He isn't the Steelers' missing piece for a Super Bowl. I like him, but Aiyuk boosts us to a chance to lift a Lombardi. Even add an offensive lineman and a pick if you have to.
Yeah, so I think adding James Daniels can make some sense. He'd probably be the only person that I'd toss in a trade package. Calvin Austin I'd toss in there, but if the 49ers are calling Vegas saying, hey, what about Davante Adams? I don't think they're going to drop as low as Calvin Austin. And the 49ers have a Calvin Austin. It's Danny Gray. They're in the same draft class. They're capable of doing the same things. They have a Ricky Pearsall. They have a Juwan Jennings. They have the inside guys. They want a true star wide receiver in return. It's tough to say Calvin Austin would push that bill unless you're adding more draft capital. And I don't think it's worth adding more draft capital. If I'm the Steelers, I would rather go into the season with the roster that you have than lose a trade to the 49ers. Plain and simple.
Let's go to Dalton's question going into next week's practices. Says, how are the Bills Steelers co-practices going to work? Do they just share the same field, or are they co-practicing as in throwing the ball to each other, or is it more of a scrimmage?
It's more of a scrimmage. It'll be like warm-ups before a game where, one team's on one side of the ball, or the 50, the other team's on the other side of the 50, and then they will commingle during team sessions and 7-on-7 and so on and so forth. I'm so excited for that, but at the same time, there are just fights after fights after fights after fights in joint practices, and I expect that to happen in Pittsburgh come next Thursday.
Brandon Aiyuk isn't the only wide receiver that's currently holding in or holding out. FIFO wants to know, how much is CeeDee Lamb asking for? Are you aware of that situation in Dallas?
Last time I checked in on the CeeDee Lamb situation, it was over $30 million a year, and that Jerry Jones wasn't going to give it to him. So I expect him to be in the same boat. The only difference here in my head is that the 49ers have backed themselves into a corner. The Cowboys have backed themselves into a corner, but they're also dumb enough to make it happen. So I would imagine CeeDee Lamb gets paid because they're just going to piss off Dak more and see where that goes. But I would imagine CD gets a deal done. When, who knows? But I don't think he's actually had any trade talks or at least any like developing ones worth monitoring.
Sean asks, if the Raiders are willing to part with Davante Adams for just a second-round pick and the Niners are making it difficult for the Steelers, then why don't the Steelers just try to take Davante Adams?
Yeah, I mean, I would go get Davante Adams for a second-round pick any day of the week. Any day of the week. It's the problem with that one is we looked it up. It's next year. It's like $40 million or something for Davante Adams cap hit. That's crazy. And if you cut him, you lose a boatload of money. It's just a difficult situation. but it does make some sense for the right now approach and to give up less draft capital and to, if the spending less worked out the same, I could see exactly why you would go make that trade. But because you're going to spend a boatload of money, give up a second round pick and have them for a significantly less time, that doesn't really even out.
Let's go to Marquez Smith, who has another option for the receiver front. Says, could you see us sending James Daniels and a draft pick to the Titans for DeAndre Hopkins? The Titans recently lost their starting right guard due to injury.
Yeah, so my only issue there is DeAndre Hopkins suffered a knee injury, so you don't know when he's going to play or what's going to go on. And you could probably send James Daniels, but I'm giving up much less for DeAndre Hopkins than I am Brandon Aiyuk, like much less. I think DeAndre Hopkins, a 4th-round pick, is the most I'm giving up for him, including a player, because of the knee injury and his age. It just doesn't really make a whole ton of sense.
Let's go to Omar's Burner, who asks, good morning, Noah and Nick. I wanted to ask if this move solidifies Omar Khan to win Executive of the Year in 2024.
Yeah, heck yeah. Heck yeah. What Omar has done this offseason, if he could pull off a Brandon Aiyuk trade in the Steelers' favor, yes, I think he should. I think he should, especially if the Steelers are good. All you got to do is go win one playoff game. If the Steelers win one playoff game, he has done so much more than Steelers have been able to do in the last 5+ years. So in my head, yeah, definitely.
Joe Dilly wants to know, will you guys be attending the sidelines of the Steelers game tonight, or is it a chips, beer, and couch situation?
Yeah, I'll be in the box. I'll be in the press box. Don't get to go down on the field. That's players only and Missy Matthews and then a couple of TV people, but I'm not a TV guy. So I'll be up in the box. I'll be pigging out on halftime hot dogs and chicken tenders and all the dessert that they could possibly offer me. So I will have a good time, and I'll have plenty of updates as they come throughout the game.
Let's go to Norman, who wants to say, I'm glad to hear Zach and Beanie from WVU are kicking butt in preseason. Do you think Zach gets a lot of snaps today?
Yeah, I think all the rookies get a ton of snaps tonight. A ton. More than any other player. They're going to keep Zach Frazier and Mason McCormick and even Spencer Anderson, those guys out there, as long as they possibly can to get some game action and really rev that up. Yeah, I would expect them to play. I would expect them to be in by the end of the first team reps, not the entire time, but right at the end, and then transition into maybe a full quarter or two afterwards.
Dalton has another question here saying, with a trade package of a 2nd, 4th, and Van Jefferson for Brandon Aiyuk and a 5th, who says no to that?
I mean, I would say yes to that, easy. But Van Jefferson's the same thing as everybody else. The Calvin Austin situation, like, do the 49ers want Van Jefferson? I don't think that they do. I think they want much more than that. But I think a 2nd, a 4th, and Van Jefferson for the Steelers makes a lot of sense.
Pete wants to ask, what are they currently trying to trade to San Francisco, and what all teams are currently involved?
From what I've heard, the Steelers are the only team involved. They're the only team that is still in contact with the 49ers. I believe that the reports that the Browns and the Patriots were in there are maybe a little bit far-fetched for how involved that they actually were. I believe that it's just the 49ers and the Steelers. As for what they're offering, if I had to guess, and I heard a little bit, but all I heard was really that the 49ers are asking for multiple first-round picks and the Steelers aren't offering a second. So if I had to guess, they're offering a 3rd-round pick for Brandon Aiyuk, and they're feeling pretty comfortable about it.
Derek Ross, says, game day, I know that Highsmith isn't playing today, but do you have an update on his injury, and did you see him at practice yesterday?
Yeah, he was at practice yesterday. He wasn't actually practicing. He was just in sweats on the sideline. Hamstring injury this early in practice or this early in training camp doesn't really worry me. It's nothing. If he had a wrap on, or if it was something serious, or if he was away from the team, you'd be a little bit worried that it's something severe, but from where it stands right now, I believe that it's just minor and they're just not going to push him back until he's like 100%, 110%, because there's really just no need for him to be out there during training camp practices or during the preseason.
Norman also wants to know, Noah, do you think Beanie Bishop could rise to fame as an undrafted free agent similar to James Harrison?
Yeah, I think he's got the best opportunity to do so. I mean, him cracking the starting lineup in the first depth chart, I don't care what Mike Tomlin says or how much he's going to downplay that. He's he's done some legendary stuff. So he's looked good. I think he's got the best opportunity to become something special for the Steelers as an undrafted guy.
Pittsburgh Heather says, will P. Ryan or Edwards make the team as a running back?
If I had to guess, P. Ryan's got a significantly better shot than Edwards does. Jonathan Ward and LaMichael P. Ryan have been the most impressive backup running backs, I would say, to this point. Aaron Shumplin is right there as well. But Cordero Patterson's working his way back, and once he's back on the field, we'll see whether all that's just talk or it means absolutely nothing.
Alexander says, hey, I've been out of the loop with the Aiyuk updates for like a day. Is he still expected to come to Pittsburgh? Also, will Justin get more than a few snaps later?
Yeah, Justin's going to get a couple of series. I would imagine just about a full quarter for Justin Fields, unless he goes out there and the first 2 series are ridiculous and he looks just totally fine and the Steelers are just going to move on like they did last season with Kenny Pickett. When it comes to Aiyuk, he's still expected to come. I still stand firm on the 70%. We got 48 hours for the second week of August, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think the expectation is he still ends up in Pittsburgh.
Another question here on the Aiyuk front is Aiyuk waiting to see some preseason Pittsburgh quarterback play before jumping over to the Steelers?
No, Brandon Aiyuk is full. I want to be in Pittsburgh. That it's not. It is the Steelers and the 49ers. It has nothing to do with Aiyuk at this point. He has made it clear. That's why they're pressed up against the wall. That's why this is becoming a desperate move by the 49ers, is because Aiyuk has made it clear, I want to be a Steeler. Make me a Steeler. It's the only team I'm willing to play for. So it has nothing to do with the Steelers quarterback situation or anything. Ayuk's not waiting. All he's waiting for is for a deal to get done.
Burt Butler says, if Fields plays poorly during the preseason, do you think that'll be the end of the talk about his potential and thought about being a starter, especially after all his chances to be that guy?
Yeah, I mean, in Pittsburgh, at least, if Justin Fields comes out here and he stinks, then, I mean, Russ is your guy. You're not even going to think about it. The quarterback competition is quietly faded into nothing. That being said, I have a hard time believing that's going to happen, but it could. This is the NFL, and the Texans are a very good team, so you never know. But yeah, if Justin does not play well tonight, and it's clear that it's Justin's fault, then yeah, it ends.
Let's go to Josh's question. He says, very late to the stream, what do you expect the framework to be of a Brandon Aiyuk trade, even if it is a 3-teamer?
If it's a 3-teamer, I expect the Steelers to send draft picks to that 3rd team, a wide receiver from the 3rd team to go to San Francisco, and Aiyuk to come to Pittsburgh. If it's a 1-for-2, I believe the Steelers are looking at, I think right now the Steelers are only offering a 3rd-round pick and saying, take it or leave it, who cares? That could go up, it could go down, who knows? But I don't imagine it's not going to be a 1st-rounder, and I have a hard time believing it might be a 2nd-rounder at this point either.
Pittsburgh Heather says, is this Cam Hayward's last year? Do the Steelers give him a 3-year contract extension? That seems a little longer term than the Steelers want to give out.
Yeah, it is longer than the Steelers want to give out. Cam Hayward is a unique player because he's not Hines Ward. He's not Troy Polamalu. He's not any of those guys that they forced into retirement. He's much better at his age than those guys were. He's still a superstar on the football field. I could see a 2-year deal. A 1-year extension, maybe. I don't know. The number's got to be right, but I think it maxes out at 2 years for Cam Hayward, which gives him 3 years this year and then 2 years after it to kind of make that work.
Let's go to next question. That is, do you think an Aiyuk resolution will be made by the Steelers' next preseason game?
I hope so. I don't know. I have no idea because yeah, everything that's going on right now, you have to take the most calm report. That's the report that you rely on. Do not rely on anybody tossing stuff out on Twitter saying it's a done deal. Or, I mean, like, look, we had the Ricky phase for a little while saying like it's in place, blah, blah, blah. When it's overhyped, when people are just hammering down that this is going to happen, it's already here, you could kind of look at it and say, it's not there. Like you have to go for the most calm report possible. Right now, those reports are that the expectation is he lands in Pittsburgh, but that no trade is in place and that the 49ers are not satisfied with what the Steelers are looking at.
Luke Nessie asks, what superstar should a Steelers player date to compete with Taylor Swift and help our Super Bowl chances this year?
I mean, look at dude, Mason Rudolph. Okay. Mason Rudolph had the best opportunity to do so. That guy's a future bachelor. I already know it. He takes his helmet off sometimes and you're just like, yeah, that guy's going to be on television one day. Like, it's just, when he was a starting quarterback, he would shower before the press conference to make sure his hair looked good. Like, he's future bachelor. Right now, I mean, they have one. It's Russell Wilson, who's dating this woman named Sierra, who's currently on tour with Missy Elliott, which, if you grew up in my generation, which I'm sure that everybody did, or is older than me, maybe some people are younger, but I feel like Steelers fans know, like, that's a big name. So I would say Russ is the guy. Is definitely the guy.
You could always bring back Duck Hodges. He's with Laney Wilson.
Somebody asked me this the other day, I think on this podcast, actually, who would have a better, who's gonna be remembered more in 20 years, Mason Rudolph or Duck Hodges? And if Duck Hodges marries Laney Wilson, it will be Duck Hodges. It will be Duck Hodges.
Let's go over to Vibing with the Dogs, who says, if the Aiyuk deal gets done, do they want to win on a rookie quarterback contract or just win for this year and figure out the rest later?
They just want to win this year and they'll figure out the rest later. If the Aiyuk trade is because the Steelers believe that's their key to a Super Bowl. It's also the reason that they're not pushing to make something crazy happen, because they understand that nothing is guaranteed in the NFL. And if it doesn't work out this year, they have to figure it out next year, because they're not a one and done team. But the Aiyuk trade is only in the mind of Omar Khan because he believes that's the missing piece to make them a really, really big contender. Not that they're not a contender now, but an even bigger contender for the Super Bowl.
Marlon has a really good question here saying, could the change in how we're operating this year versus the last few years change how Tomlin handles things at the coaching level? Everyone says we're complacent. Could we be seeing a change?
Yes and no. I think the biggest change is that Mike Tomlin is going to let his coaching staff kind of do a little bit more. Let his coaches, let his quarterback do more. I mean, you have to remember the last 3 years, Matt Canada didn't allow quarterbacks to change the play at the line of scrimmage. That's going to change this year. There's going to be checks. There's going to be different operations. I think that's the biggest thing. Is it's not so much how Tomlin's going to change, because yeah, Tomlin is complacent. Tomlin does things in a certain way and it doesn't always work out. And I think that his stubbornness and his inability to recognize that sometimes he's not right is his biggest weakness. But I believe that this year he's going to allow everybody else to do a little bit more so that that's not all on him.
Let's go to the next question here. That is, any news on Cameron Johnston? Was a big-time special team signing. Is he looking good in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, he looks phenomenal in Pittsburgh. The guy's, every punt is ridiculous. He looks great. Shout out Presley Harvin, who just signed with the San Francisco 49ers this morning, actually. But yeah, Cameron Johnston looks great.
Let's go to GC next, who says, what do you think of the chances on an Aiyuk deal gets done or progresses considerably during tonight's game?
Yeah, and for everybody who's Pepperidge Farms remembers the Joe Schobert transaction in the middle of a game, and I do too. So I think it could happen. Omar's not doing anything during a game, so you might as well make some phone calls to San Francisco. They'll be eating dinner, so you might as well make that phone call and see if John's willing to talk. I could see that happening for sure.
Sam asks, are you excited for Darnell Washington this year?
Yeah, Darnell's on my list of guys to watch tonight in the preseason opener. He's going to be electric, I hope, this season. He looks very good during training camp. Much better receiving threat, is utilized better. Like, dude, when you're 6'7" and you could catch a football, just stand in the corner of the end zone and catch a football. Like, you could figure something out. And I think that Arthur Smith sees that potential, and he's going to try to make it work.
Let's go to another question here. How is Cam Sutton looking in camp? He's a starting corner we got for free. Do you see him locking people up in week 9? Yeah,
Cam Sutton doesn't worry me at all. He's a very reliable cornerback. He's a much better slot corner than he is an outside corner, but he's still a reliable outside corner, and he can play safety. So he looks good. He's only working with the third team because they're not going to put him with the first team, and instead they have to find a first team slot corner right now. But when he's out there, yeah, he looks very good.
Mark Taylor wants to know, if neither quarterback works, would you pay Dak Prescott?
No, I would not. If I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm staying as far away from a $50 million a year quarterback as humanly possible, because all that means is that you can't do other things. And quarterbacks come into the league every year, and every year they look good. So you might as well just go get a rookie somewhere. Don't go get a Sam Darnold. Don't go get a Mitch Trubisky. just bite the bullet, trade up in the draft, and go get a rookie.
Pittsburgh Steelers fan 8 says, quick question. Do you know if Roman Wilson is going to play tonight with his injury?
No, he probably won't play throughout the preseason. Did remove the brace yesterday at practice, which is a step forward, but he's still dealing with an ankle sprain, so I don't expect him out there at all during these 3 preseason games.
KDTV says, if you had to rank our rookies and UFAs from best to worst, what would it be? Let's say, give me a top 3 for each.
Yeah, so of UDFAs and draft picks, or offensive and defensive?
I think I didn't know if he meant UFAs just free agent signings or UDFAs as an undrafted free agent signing. So let's just go rookies. Either way.
All right. So we'll rank everybody, and I'll include Beanie Bishop. So I would say Zach Frazier's number 1, Troy Fautanu's number 2, Peyton Wilson's number 3, Roman Wilson's number 4, Beanie Bishop's number 5, Mason McCormick, Logan Lee, and then who we got left? Ryan Watson. Am I missing somebody?
I mean, Dejan Edwards technically, but
nah, Dejan Edwards is last. And then we'll go Ryan Watts as the 8th there.
Alrighty, let's go to Still Cold, who says, who's the MVP tonight, offense and defense?
Oh, the MVP tonight on offense is probably going to be a guy like Jaylen Warren or something. Somebody who plays into it's the guy who plays into the second team from the first team. That the skill position guy that plays from first team into second team, I would guess that's Jaylen Warren. That would be my guess. Defensive is going to be Peyton Wilson. It's definitely going to be Peyton Wilson.
Devin Lamb says, how do you feel about our depth at safety position? Last season, there were a lot of nagging injuries that kept us thin at the position.
Yeah, this year I feel good about it. I mean, Minka, Deshaun Elliott, and DeMonte KZ are a strong 1-2-3 punch. Come week 10, you get Cam Sutton back, who could also play safety. Darius Rush could play safety. Corey Trice, you got maybe Ryan Watts that you could sneak onto the practice squad. I feel good about it. I think the safety depth is nice. Miles Killebrew doesn't really play safety. He's more just a special teamer. But I think overall it's in a much better position. Obviously, injuries happen and you'll have to change some things, but you do have some pretty reliable depth, especially in the back half of the season.
Lugo Dimes wants to know, how do you expect Peyton Wilson to perform later this evening?
Yeah, just like I said, I think he's going to be the defensive MVP tonight. I expect him to play a large chunk of snaps and look really good in the process. I expect him to get some first-team reps, some second-team reps, and I mean, people are just going to see how fast and athletic he is, but also how he packs a punch when he goes to tackle.
Let's go to the next question. If Russ plays on par as he did last year in Denver, accounting for a little higher in stats because he sat out the last 2 games, what's the most that you would pay him per year?
$30 million. I don't think I'm surpassing $30 million on either quarterback after the season, no matter how good they play, just because after $30 million, you are in a pickle. You have found yourself in a situation where you're taking a risk on a guy who, might be really good, but if they don't, or if they turn out to not be that great, you have backed yourself into a hole. Now, Russ is different because it's a 1-year deal compared to a multi-year deal, but 30 million would probably be where I cap it. 35 if it's a 1-year deal for Russ.
Let's go over to Leandrew 25 that says, I know it's pretty early, but if the quarterback situation doesn't work out, do you see the Steelers potentially drafting Shadur Sanders from Colorado or Quinn Ewers from Texas next season?
Yeah, I think both of those guys are on the table. I believe the Pittsburgh Steelers, if their quarterback situation doesn't work out, will say, what do we need to do to move up in the NFL draft and go get a quarterback? That's what I think the best case scenario is for them if it doesn't work out, and what will be on the mind of Omar Khan, which is also why you don't trade your first-round pick and you try not to trade your second-round pick for Brandon Aiyuk.
Let's go over to Phil the Need, who says, do you think Calvin Austin will have a breakout game tonight?
I mean, Calvin Austin had a couple of breakout games last preseason, so I don't see why not. I don't know how the wide receivers are going to play out and also how much action they're going to get, so it's a wait-and-see situation. You know, is this going to be a run-heavy night? Is Justin Fields going to get a majority of the workload so that the Steelers could see what they got in them? We'll wait and see. You know, that's the problem with Russ doing the walkthrough yesterday is you have no idea what's coming because Justin Fields was not in there with the first team. But I think he's got the potential to, certainly.
Biggie wants to know, is Jack Coletto going to just be a bulldozer?
Straight bulldozer, man. The fullback. The fullback is back in Pittsburgh. I'm very excited about it, and tonight is going to be a big one. Just one play. That's all we need is one big play from Jack Coletto.
Three-time has a good question here. Do you think the Steelers win tonight's game?
Oh, I'm going to say no. At home against the Houston Texans, I mean, maybe, but Houston's got some good depth. I mean, they already have a preseason game behind them. They got a pretty strong. It depends on what you say by winning. If the first quarter is a win or loss, I think Pittsburgh's got a really good shot. If we're going full game, I just think by the end of it, you're going to be lining up with John Rice Plumlee at quarterback, and I don't know what's to come there. So we'll see what happens. But I don't bet. My thing is I don't bet on the preseason. Because you just never know.
Let's go to the next question here. That is, who are you most excited to see perform on the offensive line tonight?
That's a good one. The tackles, Dan Moore, Broderick Jones, and Troy Fautanu. How do you look? How good does Dan Moore look? How good does Broderick Jones look? Does Troy Fautanu get first team reps? How good does he look? That's what I'm looking for.
DJ Thomas says, we have talked about a lot of new players and a lot of players in their second year for a breakout. Is there anyone maybe we forgot about that we should be giving a second look to?
To be honest, no. I mean, Van Jefferson has an opportunity to have a bigger year. Darnell Washington has an opportunity to have a bigger year. Calvin Austin, Pat Freiermuth. You go on the defensive side of the ball. Dante Jackson could revamp himself. Landon Roberts is going to take a step forward because that dude's just reliable as they come. DeMarvin Leal and Isaiah Loudermilk, I think, will sneak up on some people. But besides that, I think we've addressed pretty much everybody.
Let's close it out with Lugo Dimes, who says, if we end up getting Aiyuk, how do you expect our wide receiver core performs? And do you think things will crash between him and George Pickens?
I think there's always a possibility for some wide receiver drama. In the NFL, wide receiver drama is always there. So I think that possibility is there for sure. I think the wide receiver group as a whole performs very well because if you have Brandon Aiyuk and George Pickens, I mean, good things got to happen, right? The only way that it wouldn't be is if your quarterback can't get them the football, and I have a hard time believing that they don't have options to get them a football. So I think that it works out very well. I expect George Pickens and Brandon Aiyuk to be a crazy duo if they end up in Pittsburgh together.
We got one more at the buzzer here, and we'll close it with this one. 5-1 last year against the AFC North. Do you think the Steelers have a winning record against that same division this year?
Yeah, I do. I think you lose one to Cincinnati. I don't think Cincinnati's going to be as easy because Joe Burrow is going to be back. But you got Lamar Jackson's number. Cleveland doesn't scare me. Maybe it might not be 5-1, but I believe that you are pulling off a winning record. Yeah, I would guess. Yes.
That's a wrap.
All right. With that said, we are heading out of here, guys. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. As always, please go find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. There's a massive game tonight, so we will have everything leading up, during, and after the game and all throughout the weekend as things come and go with Brandon Aiyuk and the preseason opener. So make sure to check all of that out. With that said, enjoy the game tonight and another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.